Good morning. Purpose of our call today is to discuss two specific training areas that are a follow-up to the assessment that was conducted recently. We've all discussed the results of that assessment and action plan that goes with it. Within that action plan, there are a number of structural changes that are being discussed, and two specific areas that involve training as the primary way of addressing these needs. So those are the two things that we agreed that we would discuss today. So when it comes to these two areas, one is in performance management. And in performance management, we've identified in stores that there are pervasive and persistent ways that performance is not up to already established standards about how customers should be greeted, standards with regard to upselling. And since these can now be considered performance issues, there may be other reasons that might contribute or help to make a change in this area, but we've agreed that training is really the way to get the desired change when it comes to these performance areas. So that's one. And the other is in turnover. Also in the retail side of the business, we've seen in retail turnover, we know 100% turnover is pretty much to be expected in any mall, any market area where we do business. Our turnover has been a bit higher than that. That's one issue. And even more importantly, our store manager turnover has been very troublesome. And that leads to considerable disruption and problems with the continuity. And even with the first item that I mentioned, performance management, if you don't have consistent management in a store, if you don't have people who are there for a consistent amount of time, it's pretty hard to expect that employees in a store are going to be following the standards when their leadership is constantly changing. So in some ways, these two things can go quite well together. So I'm providing you with the details of the type of training that I'm able to provide in these two areas. I'm sending you actual presentations, drafted presentations with modules that are customized to your organization, and I ask you to please read through them. We're not going to go through the actual content of the presentation in this call. I will highlight some of the important aspects of the presentations, and I'll ask you to read through it and get back to me with any requests for changes, highlighting certain areas, stressing certain areas that you think are particularly important, so that we can refine the content to make it most applicable to your organization's needs. First, I'd like to tell you about an individual who I think is important to our conversation today, too. His name is Donald Kirkpatrick. He's considered to be the godfather, the guru, whatever you want to call him, of training evaluation, of evaluating the effectiveness of training in organizations. He first wrote his theory about training, evaluating the effectiveness in training in the 50s, and to this date nobody has come close to or surpassed you could say, the wisdom of his theory. Nobody has come up with anything better. As a matter of fact, he continued to be active for many years in consulting and writing, and only passed away just a few short years ago in 2014. I'll tell you real quickly, I think it's very valuable for our conversation today, what Kirkpatrick says. When you're evaluating training, there are 4 levels on which you can evaluate training. The lowest level, or you could say really the most superficial level, is did the participants like it? Did they enjoy the training? And that's really all that a lot of training that's conducted, that's all they do. So they'll give out a survey at the end of the class, the end of the session, give it out to the participants, ask them to rate it. Did you like it? What did you like? And that's about as far as it goes. Certainly more is needed. The second level, where it gets a little bit more involved and a little more helpful and valuable to the organization, is to find out from the participants if they remembered what they learned. Do they recall it even right after the class, the training, the session, the workshop, whatever it's called? Do they recall it? Do they have their retention? And after a period of time, could be another week, month, whatever is a considerable amount of time that's for that organization is an important milestone, say after a month, 3 months, even 6 months. Do they still remember what they learned? That's helpful, important, valuable for the organization to know that. Kirkpatrick says you still need to go to much more valuable levels of evaluating training if you really want to know if your training that you're investing in, you have employees investing their time in this, managers investing their time. He says the next level, the third level, is to find out if there's behavior change. Did the participants, after participating in this training, after hopefully liking it, maybe they didn't not even like it, but they remembered it, did they change their behavior? The desired change that was the objective of the training, did the behavior change in a way that is what the organization wishes that the participants, employees, members who were performing these functions, is the behavior changing in a positive way? That's Kirkpatrick's third level of conducting training evaluation. The most important, we'll say the highest level, and the level you want to get to as much as possible, that Kirkpatrick says is the fourth level, is this question: the bottom line results that the organization wants, were they achieved? Can they be measured? And can we find out after a reasonable amount of time, is it better quality? Was it better productivity? Reduction of waste materials? Faster delivery to the customer? Whatever that bottom line result is that achieved? And in some way, it's for any training to be valuable, it has to be connected to the bottom line results of what the organization wants. So the participants could like it, they could remember it, they might even change their behavior, but if that change in behavior doesn't bring the desired results, the bottom line results to the company, then even then, the return on the investment, the value of the training that was conducted will not be there. So I'd like to just suggest that we keep that in mind as we're discussing these two training areas today. Of course, that the results need to be there, they need to be identified ahead of time. Before any training is begun, and before this training would be begun, we need to identify two things. What's the top level objective? What do we want to see, for example, improved selection of store managers? And secondly, and even more important, what's the measurable business objective that goes along with that improved selection of store managers? So we'll keep that in mind. To achieve training objectives in that context, you can't just have people go into a room, sit there, have somebody talk to them, or have them watch a PowerPoint presentation, or go online and view a course or read a manual for an hour or so and expect, okay, I got it. I know what the company wants me to do. To a certain extent, you can get results from that kind of training from the most motivated people, but you won't get results across the board if you conduct training in that way. In order to achieve the type of objectives that we're talking about, results-oriented objectives to the bottom line of the business, there needs to be much more. It needs to be training that includes participation, real interactive type participation, practice by the participants where they're able to practice what's being learned, feedback then based on the practice that's done within the session, that they're given feedback. Try it again now that you've received feedback from the trainer, from your co-participants. Let's try it again, a little better this time, sometimes a little bit like an actor, we do a lot of role playing and other very interactive type activities in these sessions, so that just like a director says to an actor, now try it again this way, try it with this tweak, that tweak. We want, especially for these two topics we're talking about, for interviewing skills, to get better quality store managers, and for performance management to maintain the standards that are expected for interacting with customers who come into our stores. We do want that to be happening. And then follow-up after the training, within those reasonable periods of time of 3 months, 6 months, even 9 months, 12 months, to see if the desired results are happening. These are areas that we would be addressing in these two workshops, and this is what we're the purpose. So I'd like to open this to discuss right now with you your thoughts on this, and after that I'll go through the content, the actual content of these two modules, not every slide of every PowerPoint or every activity, but I'll give you the overview of what would be included, and then I'll ask for your feedback on where we would go from there.